Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers. It's Kieran here, and in this video we're going to be looking at two big trainers in every sense of the word. We're going to be comparing the On Cloudmonster with the ASICS Novablast 3. Now the Cloudmonster was brand new for 2022, while the ASICS Novablast 3 has had some sort of quite serious upgrades. Which of these should you be spending your money on? In this video we're going to try and help you work that out. Onto some key details then. When it comes to drop, the Novablast 3 and the Cloudmonster share an 8mm drop. It's the same for both. In terms of weight, the Novablast 3 is 8.9 ounces or 253 grams in a UK men's size 8.5, whilst the Cloudmonster comes in heavier at 9.7 ounces or 276 grams. On price, the Novablast 3 is £135 or $140 in the US. The Cloudmonster is a chunk more expensive at £150 in the UK or $170 in the US. Quick word on the design highlights then. With the ASICS Novablast 3, you're getting a new midsole foam in this third generation. It's now using Flight Foam Blast Plus cushioning. You've got a slightly higher midsole stack than generation 2, but in addition to making for a bouncier ride, that new lighter foam still means the shoe is actually 30 grams lighter than the previous version. You've got pretty dense mesh uppers, big padded heel collar, overlays in the heel for added hold and stability, and you've got strategically placed AHR rubber on the outsole for grip and reinforcements. Over onto the Cloudmonster. Well, On describes the Cloudmonster as a maximalist shoe with massive cushioning and a big rebound. And the headline here is a monster midsole that features On's biggest CloudTech elements ever. Those are made from Helium Superfoam, which holds a little bit firmer. The size, the placement and the structure of those cloud pods are designed to work with a P-back speedboard inside, and the pronounced rocker geometry the shoe's got to deliver a super soft landings and maximum rebound. Up top there's a dense mesh that's pretty tight knit and structured, good amount of cushioning around the heel collar and tongue, and a pretty wide toe box too. On the outsole you've got some strategically placed outsole rubber for added grip and durability. So I want to do a quick side-by-side comparison. One of the things that you'll notice here, I mean the On Cloudmonster is not a small shoe, but the Novablast is noticeably longer even than the On Cloudmonster, which is a big shoe. This Novablast 3 does come up long. Another sort of little difference here is kind of the width of the base that you're running on. They are a little bit different. The Novablast 3 is slightly wider actually. You've got 12 centimeters kind of in that kind of widest section in the mid to forefoot, and then you've got 9.5 centimeters at the widest part of the heel. That compares to 11 centimeters in kind of the mid to forefoot in the On Cloudmonster and 9 centimeters in the heel. When it comes to the uppers, they've both got a pretty dense upper mesh. There's, they're quite kind of sort of serious, sort of thick mesh uppers on both. And the Novablast 3 offers kind of quite a significant amount of extra padding in the kind of heel. Both of these are padded in the heel sort of more than a lot of shoes, but the Novablast 3 is noticeably thicker on the padding around the heel. The Novablast 3 also has a gusseted tongue, whereas the On Cloudmonster goes for a bit more of a booty fit. But in both instances, they're pretty thin and they wrap the foot kind of equally well. Turn them round here on the outsole, and yeah, both have got strategically placed rubber. I would sort of argue there seems to be a little bit more kind of rubber outsole on the Novablast 3. You've got rubber here in the kind of main zones on the On Cloudmonster, on the kind of main impact zones, but I guess that kind of middle is sort of left a little bit more exposed.
So on the fit, I've been very happy, true to size in the On Cloudmonster. I think On does really fantastic uppers, and that continues to be the case with the Cloudmonster. The Novablast 3 runs a little bit long for me. Hasn't actually been a problem. I've been perfectly fine running it in my normal size, but I think the shoe would fit me better going half a size down, just as it is a little bit long in the toe box, but it does fit very well around the midfoot and heel.
When it came to fit for me, I ran in a UK 8.5 in both of these shoes. Now, first thing to say is I think they both kind of have a nice wrap across the top of the foot, and I managed to get a good kind of locked lace down there with no pinching, comfortable. The heel collars held my heels really well, and I felt sort of in position there. The one thing I will say is that the Novablast 3, they come up really quite long, whereas the Cloudmonsters, they fit sort of fairly sort of nicely to the end of the toe. The Novablast 3, that feels like there's almost like a thumb's width extra in there, and actually I feel like you might be wise to go half a size down in the ASICS Novablast 3 to get a bit more of a compact feel on the foot. The On Cloudmonster, I would say just go true to size. So on to the run test for me then. Testing that I've done, lots of long, slow miles, faster stuff, shorter stuff. I've done mixed of terrains, pavements, roads. I've also done river paths, compacted kind of ground, and used them on that as well. And so I've done long and short miles in both of these shoes. I also did a mile test where I ran with one shoe on each foot. I think it just gives you a really good kind of dialed in sense of how different they feel when you're running. Now the key difference for me really, I think, is just in the way the different foams perform and how that kind of ride feels underfoot. The ASICS Novablast 3, to me, they sink a bit lower, they're a bit softer in terms of the ride underfoot, but they're also a little bit more springy, I think, than the On Cloudmonster. The On Cloudmonster, these kind of Cloud Techs, although they do compress kind of, I think, more and softer than a lot of On Cloud shoes, they don't have the same sort of sinky, sort of squashy feeling that you'll get from the Novablast 3. And what I think you get is a sort of slightly firmer ride, but the whole shoe relies a lot more heavily, I think, on the kind of rocker geometry to kind of keep you rolling through and to make your kind of your easy running feel a little bit more effortless. And I think that really works. And for me overall, I actually think that I sort of ever so slightly prefer the ride, that kind of firmer ride and that roll that you get with the On Cloudmonster. Now, when it comes to overall comfort, you get great step-in comfort, instant step-in comfort from both of these shoes. They both feel sort of instantly kind of really sort of nice and plush on the feet. There's not a great deal to choose between them. The upper fit, I feel like, is surprisingly similar. There's a sort of similar amount of kind of good width in that kind of key sort of midfoot on the top, kind of that section, where sometimes that can be a bit narrow and pinch. I think they've both got good kind of room in the toe box. But if I'm kind of picking one here, I think the On Cloudmonster has a slightly more kind of disappearing sort of instant comfort feel on the foot. And even though this is a heavier shoe, and I thought you'd sort of really notice that, when I did that kind of side-by-side test, actually it wasn't all that noticeable, that extra weight that's coming in with the Cloudmonster. I think that's possibly because I'm running in a shoe that this ASICS Novablast 3 feels a little bit big, and it feels like quite a lot of shoe on the foot. It feels like more shoe on the foot than the On Cloudmonster. I think that's kind of saying something, because this is a big old shoe as well. But overall, I just think the On Cloudmonster, for me anyway, they just feel a little bit more agile, a little bit more nimble. So then let's talk about what I would use them for, and that kind of overall, I guess, sort of daily trainer versatility. If you're thinking about these in sort of a daily trainer bracket, in my mind, they both sort of come towards the easier end of daily trainers. I would use these both as easy shoes, where you just want to go out and you're plodding kind of low heart rate, head up, enjoying the moment, those kind of runs. I feel like these both perform best at. I do feel like I can go a little bit faster in the On Cloudmonster than I can in the Novablast 3, but in all honesty, for me, both of these would fit into the kind of easy to medium pace kind of bracket for what I would use them for. Now, I mentioned that the Novablast 3 has that kind of wider kind of base, and I think that really does help to add a bit more stability to what is essentially quite a soft platform to run off in the Novablast 3. But again, I just feel, for me, like the ground contact and the firmness that you get through the On Cloudmonster, I just feel they sort of edge it just on overall stability. When it comes to durability, I think both of these shoes feel like they're built to last and to do long miles. I haven't really had any major problems. I think the only sort of thing, I've done more miles in the On Cloudmonster than I have in the ASICS Novablast 3. And the one thing I've noticed on the On Cloudmonster, you have got some wearing of the rubber in kind of some of the key impact zones, particularly into the heel. And I guess with the sort of shoe where I'm running slower, I'm doing a bit more kind of maybe sort of heel landing. But I reckon that's acceptable wear really for what has probably been like 200 or 300 miles in these shoes. Overall, I feel like they're solid, they're made to last, these shoes, and I think you're going to be able to do long miles in both. And then I guess final thing is to have a little word on grip. When I've run in the Novablast 3, when it's been really wet and I'm hitting metal drain covers, I feel like the grip on this isn't quite as good. I feel like the On Cloudmonster, with its textured kind of grip on the outsole here, just performs a little bit better in the wet conditions.
So the On Cloudmonster has been a real grower of a shoe for me. When I first started testing it, I thought it was okay. I thought it was a pretty interesting, max cushion shoe that had a slightly firmer, more stable ride than most of them, and came in a bit lighter, but I didn't find it incredibly versatile. And yeah, I quite liked using it, but it wasn't a shoe that really stood out for me. But with extended use, I have liked it more. The ride is, I don't know, it's just hard to pinpoint what I like about it so much, the ride, but it is very reliable, it's quite smooth, it's stable, it's accommodating, kind of no matter how I feel on the day, very tired, very fresh. I do enjoy running, my daily miles in the Cloudmonster. I still don't think it's all that versatile, I will say that. When I do head out for easy to steady runs or harder tempo runs, that kind of thing, Cloudmonster's kind of okay. I think it still feels a little bit kind of heavy and unresponsive on the foot at times, but for just mooching around on your daily jogs, I think it does a really good job of that. The Novablast, I think I've had probably the opposite experience. I don't know what the opposite of a grower is in this context, but I really liked it the first couple of runs, and since then I've gone off it a little bit as runs have gone on. I think the ride, which started out as very lively, very bouncy, very exciting, has dulled a little bit for me over time. Only about kind of 50, 60 kilometers of testing in, and I think the ride has dulled a little bit. It is still bouncier and probably a bit livelier than the Cloudmonster, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I prefer the ride of the Novablast 3. Again, it's good for rolling around, easy miles, your daily mileage, but is okay. It's not that versatile when you then push the pace a little bit. Like I've done some easy to steady runs in it, kind of more tempo pace stuff, and it sometimes just feels a bit big on the foot. And you know, it is a lightweight shoe, but it doesn't actually feel that lightweight to me. I think actually it's quite a similar feel to the Cloudmonster in that regard. They're both okay for faster paces, but really excel much more at daily runs at kind of slower paces. I'd say one thing to note about the Novablast is that the grip has improved a lot for me from those first 2 runs. It did feel very slick and slippery on wet roads at first, but after kind of 4, 5, 6 runs, the outsole's roughed up a bit, and I do think it gets better purchase now when you are on wet ground. Like on my most recent run, I was doing some steep downhills on wet tarmac, slightly broken up tarmac, and I didn't have any problems with grip, so that's a plus point. And actually the Cloudmonster's grip has been perfectly good as well. Neither have exceptional outsoles, they are clearly road shoes, but both seem to be fine in wet conditions. So in terms of performance, I find these 2 shoes are quite similar in how I would use them, even if they do feel quite different underfoot. I think both are strongest as, you know, cushioned daily trainers that work best at kind of easier, slower paces. Both are fairly versatile. Like you can do a nice mix of training in them, but I don't necessarily enjoy doing faster stuff in either of these shoes. I think of the 2, the Novablast 3 is the more versatile shoe. I think it has a slightly more lively ride when you do want to do faster running. The Cloudmonster for me really does work best as a kind of long, slow shoe, but you know, both are fairly similar in that regard. I wouldn't say the Novablast is massively better than the Cloudmonster on that front. Well, neither of these 2 would really be among my favourite daily trainers. The ride's pretty different. If you want that firmer, more stable feeling, then the Cloudmonster provides it, whereas I think the Novablast is a more kind of like modern ride with a bit more kind of bounce and liveliness to it, even though it has dulled a little bit for me after those first couple of runs. I think they're both pretty good rides. Neither absolutely nail the sweet spot for myself, but there are lots of runners out there who like both these shoes, so they must be doing something right. And then what might be important, I think, is the price here. Like as always with On shoes, the Cloudmonster is, you know, pretty expensive. It comes a little bit more than the Novablast. I'd say of the 2 shoes, I'd probably just edge it to the Novablast as the more versatile shoe, so that would be the one I go for, especially as it is a bit cheaper. But in terms of performance and how they feel, it might just depend on what kind of ride you prefer. The Novablast has that slightly bouncier feeling, softer feeling, whereas the Cloudmonster is a bit more reliable and smooth.
Now, if you're looking for an easy to medium sort of paced, good solid daily trainer, I think both of these actually represent really sort of good shoes. The choice for me is basically going to come down to whether or not you like something that's got a slightly more kind of firm sort of rocker ride, or something that's just a bit more regular, but you know, a bit more kind of softness, cushioning, and a little bit more, tiny bit more kind of spring. Now, that's really, I think, going to be down to sort of personal preference. For me, I think overall, for the way that it feels on the foot, for the disappearing feel, for the overall comfort, for the fact that it's a slightly firmer ride, and I get that kind of, I prefer that sort of rocker sort of thing. I'm going to pick the On Cloudmonster. Although they're a bit more expensive, these would be the shoe that I would choose to do easy miles over the ASICS Novablast 3. But I also get that the Novablast softness is arguably what makes it a sort of really popular shoe among many, and if that's your thing, then I think you're going to prefer the Novablast 3 over the On Cloudmonster for sure. The On Cloudmonster is On's softest shoe yet, but it's definitely a firmer ride than the Novablast 3. So there you have it. That has been our head-to-head comparison of the ASICS Novablast 3 and the On Cloudmonster. If you have any questions about the review, hit us up in the comments below. Have you run in both of these? Tell us what your experiences were. Are you a bigger fan of the Novablast 3 or the On Cloudmonster? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and to ring the bell to hear about more kind of shoe reviews coming up on the channel soon. We're doing a lot more head-to-heads of shoes, so if you're working out a difference between 1 or 2 shoes, then this is the place to come. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about these shoes, and we hope to see you again soon on the Run Testers. Goodbye for now.